That envelope changed everything. My mother slid it across the white tablecloth, her diamond ring catching the light. My sister leaned closer, phone ready, pretending this was a moment worth recording. The restaurant went quiet, even the string quartet paused mid-note. Inside the envelope wasn't money or a card, it was a disownment letter signed by all of them. My graduation gift. I folded it once, then again, and stood up. No words, no scene, just silence and the weight of paper in my hand. They thought they were ending my story. They didn't realize they were starting their own. Stay until the end. You'll see how silence changes everything. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with performance standards. My father, Charles Bennett, measured it through results and return on investment. My mother, Diane, measured it through appearances. My sister, Avery, was the perfect combination of both. At dinner parties, I was always introduced last. Avery is a senior associate in New York, my mother would announce proudly, her hand resting on my sister's shoulder. Then her tone would soften, almost apologetically. And this is Taylor. She's still studying. The same pause, the same polite smile, as if I were a delayed project awaiting approval. Guests would nod briefly before turning their attention back to the champagne. I'd smile quietly, predictably. Our dining room always smelled like cedar polish and quiet expectations. The chandelier above the glass table cast fractured light across my water glass, scattering reflections that never quite aligned. I used to count them, tiny broken halos, while my father discussed markets and mergers, and my mother rehearsed gratitude for donors who mistook vanity for generosity. Avery thrived in that world. She knew how to glide through conversations, when to laugh lightly, when to tilt her head just enough to look attentive. I studied her like a formula. Every move earned approval. Every pause was calculated. I, on the other hand, worked nights at a cafe near campus. The espresso machine hissed louder than any conversation at home. There, people didn't care about last names or family legacies. They just wanted their orders right and their names spelled correctly. I liked that. It was measurable, simple, honest. One Sunday after a long shift, I came home to find Avery at the kitchen counter, laptop open, my father pouring wine. "We were just talking about you," he said, swirling the glass. "Avery thinks you're wasting your time behind a coffee counter." Avery didn't look up. "It's not wasting, Dad. It's character building." Her tone was light, but edged enough to cut through the politeness. I laughed softly, pretending it didn't sting. "I'm funding my tuition," I said. My father shrugged. "Degrees don't pay bills, Taylor. Numbers do. Remember that." I wanted to remind him that I understood numbers better than anyone in that house, that I could build systems, track data, model outcomes, but his focus had already drifted back to Avery. That night, I stopped trying to join their conversations. Instead, I watched, observed, and collected information in the quiet way that made sense to me. Still, I hoped sometimes that things might change. When I won a national research scholarship, I sent them the email with the press clipping attached and waited for a response. 6 hours later, my mother replied, "So proud of you, sweetheart. We have a gala tonight. Can we post about it tomorrow?" They never did. That was the day I realized something permanent about our family. Attention was a currency, and I was always the unpaid intern in their empire. I remember the sound of the crystal glasses that night, clinking perfectly in rhythm, as if the house itself celebrated my invisibility. That was when I learned my place in the Bennett family, somewhere between silence and proof. 2 days before graduation, a message appeared in the family group chat, a reservation link. Maison Lumiere, the same restaurant my mother booked for every milestone that wasn't mine. The message was brief. Pre-graduation dinner for Taylor. Dress appropriately. No emoji, no warmth, just control disguised as care. I clicked the link. My name wasn't even on the guest list. The host greeting read, "The Bennett family, Charles, Diane, Avery." The omission wasn't an accident. It was a statement. An hour later, Avery texted privately, "Don't overthink it. It's just formatting." Formatting. The word echoed. That was how they saw me, a variable easily deleted. That night, I sat by my window, the city lights flickering like static. My inbox filled with unread messages from investors, classmates, professors. Achievements and acknowledgments that felt weightless when the people who taught you your worth still measured you in silence. I scrolled through old family photos, vacations, holidays, fundraisers, my mother's flawless posture, my father's trained smile, Avery's polished charm, and me, always at the edge of the frame, half lit, half seen. It wasn't new. It was just the first time I saw it clearly, without hope. The next morning, I received an email from the university confirming my commencement speech. My mentor, Dr. Alvarez, had nominated me for the Young Leader in Technology Award. She wrote, "This is your moment, Taylor. Own it quietly." Quietly. That word felt like a lifeline, something solid in a world built on pretense. I closed the laptop and took a long breath. The sunlight cut through the blinds in clean lines. I noticed how precise everything around me had become. The mug aligned with the notebook, papers stacked by color, the clock ticking steadily. That's when I realized my life wasn't chaotic. It was structured, just not by them anymore. I smiled, the kind of smile you wear when the evidence is already collected. The night before the dinner, the city hummed under heavy summer rain. My apartment windows fogged at the corners, the glass trembling with each passing train. Inside, everything was organized, papers aligned, screens glowing a calm blue. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, its scent cut through the storm, sharp and grounding. My fingers tapped the keyboard in rhythm with the rain. Each line of data, each saved document, felt like a quiet act of defiance. I had stopped explaining myself months ago. Explanations are for those seeking approval. Records are for those intent on being remembered. So I kept records. Every scholarship form, every award letter, every line of code from my project, RootFlow. What started as a research assignment had evolved into a functioning platform that helped small logistics companies optimize delivery routes. Ethan handled analytics. Maya managed the user interface. And I, the barista with an MBA, wrote the core algorithm. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. The breakthrough came before sunrise one morning when I ran a simulation that reduced fuel costs by 12%. I leaned back, staring at the numbers. Proof. Real, measurable proof. By the time the university's startup symposium arrived, RootFlow was ready. Before I went on stage, Dr. Alvarez stopped me. "You don't need to sell yourself," she said. "Just show them how it works. Let the data speak." And it did. When the presentation ended, polite applause turned into something genuine. Among the crowd stood a man in a tailored gray suit, Nathan Cole, CEO of Northbridge Logistics. Afterward, he approached me, his tone measured but sincere. "You've built something scalable," he said, studying the graphs. "But more importantly, something fair." Fair. A word I hadn't heard in years. We met twice after that. The third time, he slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter of intent. Northbridge wanted to acquire RootFlow for $6.2 million, plus a director-level position for me after graduation. I didn't sign right away. I read every clause, every condition, ensuring the system I'd built, born from silence, not privilege, remained intact. When I finally signed, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like equilibrium. From that day, I began building my own archive. Digital copies of every record, time-stamped and encrypted, transaction receipts, licensing agreements, payment confirmations. A paper trail that didn't just tell a story, it secured it. The night I received the final transfer confirmation, I printed the letter. The sound of the paper sliding out of the printer was cleaner than applause. That's when I opened the family group chat for the first time in months. The most recent message was from my mother. A photo of Avery at another law firm gala, captioned, "Proud doesn't begin to cover it." I typed a simple reply, "Graduation dinner confirmed. I'll be there." No emojis. No explanations. Afterward, I cleaned my apartment like I always did before major moments. Every item had its place, every surface aligned. My offer letter, my degree folder, and a small childhood envelope, a faded birthday card from my mother that once read "To my little dreamer." I placed the new documents beneath it, the ink fresh, the paper weighted with meaning. Midnight came quietly. I closed my laptop, poured the last of the coffee, and watched the city lights ripple across the river. I thought about that upcoming dinner. Their smiles, the cameras, the performance. For the first time, I wasn't anxious. They would bring their own letter, thinking it would define me. But I had already signed something far more lasting, my independence. I fell asleep with that thought. The rain had stopped. The silence that followed felt almost ceremonial. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The first light caught the corner of my desk, reflecting off the silver clip holding the contracts together. I touched the paper lightly, grounding myself. I didn't dress for them. I dressed for the record. Clean blazer, tied hair, neutral tones. The kind of presence that doesn't ask to be seen but refuses to be forgotten. Before leaving, I aligned my coffee cup exactly 1 inch from the laptop's edge. Habit. Order. Proof. I locked the door behind me. Chicago's streets were still damp, reflections stretching across the asphalt. My reflection in the passing cab window looked back, calm, composed, recognizable at last. When I arrived near Maison Lumiere, I paused in front of the glass doors. Inside, chandeliers shimmered faintly. I could already see my mother's silhouette and the familiar tilt of Avery's head as she adjusted her phone camera. I took a steady breath. They thought tonight was their stage. They had no idea the script had already been rewritten, signed, sealed, time-stamped. This time, I wasn't walking into their performance. I was walking into proof. The hostess smiled when she saw me. "Bennett party?" she asked, her tone professional. I caught the brief flicker of surprise when she realized my name wasn't on the reservation list. I nodded. "Yes," I said calmly. "They're expecting me." Inside, the air smelled of truffle butter and quiet indulgence. My family sat at a corner table beneath a halo of chandelier light. My mother waved as if this were a reunion, not an execution. Avery lifted her phone slightly, framing the moment. "Taylor, darling," my mother said, her voice dipped in sweetness. "We have something special for you." A server stepped forward, placing a pristine white envelope beside my plate. My father cleared his throat, rehearsed authority filling the space. "It's time we all move forward," he said. My mother smiled wider. "From all of us," she added. Avery's phone captured everything, the envelope sliding across the linen, my unreadable expression. I opened it slowly. The paper was thick, embossed, legal. "We, the undersigned, hereby release and relinquish all familial obligations and ties with Taylor Bennett." It was signed by each of them. Perfect signatures. Perfect loops, perfect distance. My graduation gift. The table waited for a reaction. Maybe a tear, maybe a raised voice. But I'd already lived the real drama. I folded the letter once, twice, and set it beside my coffee spoon. "Thank you," I said evenly. Avery blinked. "You're thanking us?" I met her gaze. "For closure." The air tightened, fragile as glass. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's hand hovered over her wineglass. Avery lowered her phone slightly, unsure what she was still recording. "Taylor," my mother began softly, "you don't have to make this harder." But I was already reaching into my bag. I pulled out a folder the same neutral gray as the suit Nathan Cole had worn when he handed me the contract. I placed it on the table and opened it toward them. Inside was the acquisition announcement. The Northbridge letterhead gleamed under the light. Beneath it, my name, Director of Data Operations, Root Flow Integration Lead. For a moment, no one spoke. The string quartet in the background shifted songs, unaware they were scoring an ending. Avery leaned forward, reading faster. "This is yours?" "Yes." My father frowned, the kind of frown he reserved for disappointing numbers. "You sold it?" "I built it." "Then I sold it," I said quietly. "The deal closed last week." My mother tried to recover her composure. "We didn't know." "I know," I replied. It was the first time I had ever seen my mother at a loss for words. Avery's phone was still in her hand, but the red recording light was gone. My father reached for his wineglass, but his grip trembled enough for the stem to tap softly against the marble. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply stood. "You can keep the letter," I said, sliding their disownment papers back across the table. "I already have my own." The irony landed cleanly, without noise. Behind me, I heard Avery whisper something, maybe a plea, maybe a curse, but I didn't turn back. As I reached the doorway, the restaurant's soft piano filled the silence they left behind. I paused, one hand resting on the frame, the city lights reflected in the glass ahead of me. In that reflection, I saw them still sitting there, surrounded by the world they'd built. Bright, polished, empty. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. It smelled like rain and freedom. I checked my phone. New messages from Northbridge. Notifications from press outlets already covering the acquisition. Proof, all time-stamped. The envelope in my hand felt lighter now. Just paper and ink, nothing more. They had given me their silence years ago. Tonight, I returned it. Refined. The night air off Lake Michigan felt sharper than usual, clean enough to wash away everything that lingered from that restaurant. The city pulsed beyond the glass towers, alive and indifferent. I walked without hurry, the sound of my heels blending with the rhythm of passing cars. Each step carried less weight. By the time I reached my apartment, the sky had thinned into early dawn. Pale light spilled through the blinds, painting quiet lines across the floor. I set the envelope on the counter beside my framed degree. Their letter looked small next to the new one. Northbridge's offer, embossed, final, signed. 2 documents, 2 versions of my name, one they erased, and one they couldn't. I made coffee, slow and steady. The cup clicked softly against the table, a sound that had become my pulse, measured and alive. I didn't reread their letter. It had already done its job, marking the moment I stopped asking to belong. Now it sat behind glass, pressed between achievements that couldn't be deleted. My phone vibrated once. A text from Avery. "We didn't mean it like that. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while. The dots blinked, disappeared, then blinked again. I turned the phone face down. Some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to fade into silence. Outside, the light grew warmer as the city stretched awake. Delivery vans, joggers, the rhythm of another ordinary day. I opened the window, letting the air in. Somewhere below, a train screeched metal against metal, raw and honest. In the reflection on the glass, I saw a woman who no longer needed to explain why she was standing alone. I picked up their letter one last time, folded it neatly, and slid it behind the frame of my degree, not hidden, just placed in order. Evidence of what was, proof of what changed. The air in the room steadied. So did my shoulders. Silence, at last, didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Revenge didn't sound like victory. It sounded like calm breath in a quiet room. The kind of silence you choose, not the kind forced on you. Families break loudly. Peace rebuilds quietly. They wrote me out of their story, but I became the footnote they'll never erase. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail. Embossed, tasteful, signed in my mother's looping script. The Bennett Foundation Annual Gala. Beneath it, in smaller type, honoring local innovators in technology and business. I almost laughed. They hadn't realized who Northbridge's new integration lead was yet. The press release hadn't mentioned my family name, only my title. For once, anonymity worked in my favor. That evening, I watched the live stream from home. The ballroom glittered with glass chandeliers and the sound of practiced applause. Avery stood near the podium, smiling through rehearsed charm, her voice bright as she thanked the donors. My parents sat in the front row, regal as ever, the perfect portrait of generosity. When the Northbridge logo flashed across the big screen, my mother tilted her head slightly. My father leaned forward. Avery froze for just a second too long. The presenter read the next line with cheerful precision, and a special acknowledgement to Taylor Bennett, whose innovation and leadership inspired this collaboration. There it was, my name, spoken clearly into their world, broadcast live to their peers. My parents' expressions didn't change, but something behind their eyes did. I recognized it. Recognition mixed with disbelief. The kind of silence that swallows every practiced smile. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I simply turned off the stream and let the room go still. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was measured, almost delicate. I had no desire to humiliate them, just to exist beyond their control, and for them to finally know it. The city outside shimmered in amber light, alive with possibilities that didn't need their approval. I poured another cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching the skyline I'd learned to call my own. The letter still sat under the glass of my desk, creased, worn, harmless now. I kept it there not as a wound, but as a reminder that sometimes the cleanest form of revenge isn't destruction. It's distance. In the quiet, I thought about the girl who once begged for their attention, who measured her worth in crumbs of approval. She was gone now, dissolved somewhere between betrayal and freedom. In her place stood someone steady, untethered, certain. When my phone lit up again, this time with an unknown number, I didn't reach for it. I let it ring until the sound faded into nothing. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some end with peace. And for the first time in years, that was enough.